Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today we're digging into the story of a killer garage rock band from Denton, Texas, the Briks. Now this story actually starts a little earlier, back in 1965 in Lubbock, Texas. A group of guys at Texas Tech formed a band called the Embers. We're talking Richard Borgens on vocals and lead guitar, Lee Hardesty on guitar, Bobby Daniels and Steve Martin laying down the beat on bass and drums. Pretty solid lineup, right? But the band's journey didn't end in Lubbock. They packed up and moved to Denton, just outside of Dallas, and also spent some time in Gainesville. And Gainesville is where things get really interesting. Some of the guys were attending Cook County Junior College. Let's just say it wasn't exactly known for its academic rigor. One teacher even called it a home for the academically ill. But it was at Cook County that they met two key members who would change everything. Enter Cecil Cotton, who stepped up to the mic as their new lead singer, and Mike Maroney, who took over bass duties. With these additions, the Embers became the Briks. And that, my friends, is how the legend of the Briks began. Lee Hardesty. Some of the Briks lived at the Stella Street apartments for a while. Cecil, Steve, Reggie Lang, the manager, and I had a place there, and Tommy Carter was just down a few doors. Across the courtyard is where Bob Story and Johnny Hale lived, and they were some wild and crazy guys. Just around the corner at the next complex is where the Four Speeds lived. Later they became Felicity. That was a fun time for the most part, but I think our apartment was a mess. Some of us were driving back and forth to CCJC in Gainesville at the time. The Briks signed with the Bismarck Agency, run by George Rickrick, who also managed the Chessmen. Whit Snell of the Beefeaters remembers Rickrick this way. George was the godfather of the music scene in Denton. He and Charlie Hatchett from Austin controlled everything north of San Antonio all the way to the Oklahoma border. His so-called real job was manager of the campus theater on the Denton Square. Here, at the back and above the large dimly lit balcony, was George's office, Bismarck Agency, filled with movie posters, black and white photos of bands, food wrappers and heaps of clutter, scribbled phone numbers, scratched out and circled dollar figures. There on his desk were 2 or 3 black telephones, their rotary dials worn shiny silver from thousands of calls made by George's stubby fingers. Lee Hardesty adds, George Rickrick started that laser light show in Fort Worth, at the planetarium in the Fort Worth Museum of Science and History. At one point, I helped him with some of the electronics and got a bunch of free passes to the movie theater as payment. Their first recordings were distributed on acetates only. Both I'm Losing and It's Your Choice are classic garage numbers, and it's a shame these weren't released on 45. There are 2 versions of It's Your Choice. One features a 12-string guitar, and the band takes the song at a fast pace. The other has an altogether tougher sound. On this version, the vocals are nothing less than menacing. The band generates an ominous, intense sound with Mike Maroney's repetitive bass line, the jangling guitar, drum fills, and occasional harmonies. There's a good trebly guitar solo and a neat break with just bass, drums, and hand claps. Steve Martin slams out the beat on I'm Losing, which also features their first use of a distortion pedal on the guitar. The band's harmonies add to Cecil's lead vocal, but his voice still cuts through. It's a great sound. Lee Hardesty. I can't speak for the differing versions. I remember recording them only once at Sellers in downtown Dallas. It was our first trip to the studio, and I remember the engineer running out of the control room saying, "There's something wrong here. I'm hearing horrible distortion." We laughed because he had never heard a fuzz tone before and didn't know it was intentional. Actually, he was probably right about the sound, though. That was my original homemade fuzz box, built into a wooden English leather box, and I imagine it probably did sound pretty horrible. When we had finished recording, we asked for a record, and they cut us one right there on the cutting lathe. We drove out to K-Box on Flagpole Hill around midnight and went around to the back of the building. I think the DJ was the only one there, so we knocked on the window and he opened it to talk to us. We gave him the 45 and went back to our car and listened to it on the radio. What a thrill. Seems a little more difficult to get things on the radio these days. The Briks released their first 45, Can You See Me, on Bismarck in '66, though garage fans love the flip side, Foolish Baby. Both sides are originals by Richard Borgens and Cecil Cotton. Dot Label picked it up for national distribution, and to promote the record, the Briks traveled to Houston for shows at the Catacombs around November of 1966. Lee Hardesty. It was a big thrill the first time we played there. We were given some real star treatment, ads on the radio stations, radio station interviews, a dinner, I believe. I think they might have been a little underwhelmed, though, because that stuff ended after our first night. It was a cool place, glad we didn't use pyrotechnics back then, but I liked the parties and other dance halls better where it wasn't so much of a show thing. I liked playing when people were dancing more. Mike Maroney. I also recall that the Dot record rep showed up and threw records to the audience. I also recall that we changed outfits between each set and broke a guitar or two. How nutty was that? We appeared on the Larry Kane Show during one of those trips to Houston. I remember listening to the Catacombs promos on the radio as we approached Houston. That would pump us up. On one trip to the Catacombs, they were overshadowed by the professionalism of Baton Rouge's Greek fountains. Mike Maroney. We went back there several times with various versions of the band. The last gig there that I remember was a bit humbling. We were the headliners, but they had another band that played during our breaks. All I remember was, they were awesome, kinda kicked our butts, and it was hard to get back up there and do a second set. They were some band from Louisiana, and had real good players, PA, etc. As I recall, their name was the Greek Fountains or something like that. They were good. It seems like the most common technical challenges in those days were with PA systems. They never could seem to catch up with the rest of the stuff. As a bass player, I felt techno disadvantaged as well. It was hard to keep up with the hardesty. It was never loud enough or clear enough or punchy enough. The first setup that I felt even reasonably satisfied with was dual custom towers. This Louisiana band did have a good equipment setup, including an awesome PA. Another venue for the Briks was the legendary Luann's. Cecil Cotton. We had to audition in order to play. The audition was done while Mrs. Bovis and her family were eating dinner. This was in 1966. There were 2 stages, one on each end, and another completely different room on the other side, and yes, a beer garden. The Briks also played Somethin' Else, a local TV show hosted by Ron Chapman, and played 2 songs. I'm a Man by the Yardbirds and Baby Let Me Take You Home by the Animals. I remember the window that allowed people to look in on the show while they were at the North Park Mall. It was like being in Hollywood for us. We were still in our late teens or early 20s and felt invincible. Bud Bruchard writes, "The Briks appeared on the Somethin' Else show on October 10, 1966. The music log lists them playing a song called Keep Down. When a group appeared on the show, they also performed live for the pre-show warm-up. Perhaps that is when they played the cover songs mentioned in the bio. Our music lists were often made out in a hurry before the show, so there could have possibly been a misunderstanding of the song title, especially if no one in the group remembers Keep Down. What sounds like a studio version of Baby Let Me Take You Home exists, and it's a great version with an intro that's reminiscent of the riff to the Gentleman's It's a Cryin' Shame, fine drumming, 12-string guitar, and a rave-up ending. It's likely the Briks recording came first. Could it have influenced the Gentleman's legendary guitarist, Sebe Meader? In any case, I believe it was Animals guitarist Hilton Valentine who came up with that riff for Baby Let Me Take You Home in 1964. In August 1966, Cecil Cotton, Steve Martin, the band's manager Reggie Lang, and Mike Neal of the Jackals all joined the Air Force together, drafted after they'd left Cook County Junior College. Chris Vanderkalk replaced Steve Martin on drums. Paul Ray replaced Cecil on vocals, singing on a version of Keep Down recorded at IRL. It's an interesting original with organ and descending bass line, and appeared years later with other Briks material on the old vinyl compilation Texas Punk Volume 7. Paul Ray soon left to join the Cobras. Cecil was out of the service and back in the band by January 1967, and Jamie Herndon came in on lead guitar, replacing Richard Borgens, who wanted to try production work and folk-oriented music. Later that year, the Briks released a second 45, a cover of Cream's NSU and From a Small Room, an original by Borgens. Part of a show at the Northwood Country Club was recorded, the set list full of songs made famous by British bands. Till the End of the Day, NSU, The Nas Are Blue, Heart Full of Soul, and I'm a Man. There's also a live version of Everybody Needs Someone to Love that, to my ears, comes from an earlier live performance show. All of these are collected on Texas Punk Volume 8. Lee Hardesty. I think that one of those unissued songs was actually recorded at Mike Maroney's house using his father's tape deck. The song Over You was an original by Jamie Herndon, and the real title was Green Green, if I'm thinking of the same thing here. Over You has a lot of potential as a song, with moody, churning verses going into a brief oohing over you and a short, fast break. On the version I heard, the sounds of a guitar and bass doing some practice runs intrudes on the recording briefly, about 35 seconds in. The lyrics are hard to make out, but I can hear some snippets like, the sky is blue, the night is black, the sea is green. The song finishes with an intense 12-string guitar solo that lasts a full minute over a bass line reminiscent of Cream's Tales of Brave Ulysses. The Briks broke up by 1968, and Cecil joined a band with some members of the Chessmen who had also just split. Cecil told me, Jimmy Rabbit managed a band called Texas, which included Jimmy Vaughn guitar, Cecil Cotton vocalist, Tommy Carter bass, Billy Etheridge keyboards, and on drums, Sammy Piazza. We did some recording at Robin Hood Bryan's studio in Tyler. We played only a few times, and one of those times was opening for the Jeff Beck Group with Rod Stewart at Luann's in Dallas. In 1969, Cotton moved out to San Francisco with Benny Rowe of The Wig, Steve Carnivus of the Chaparrals, and Keith Ferguson, where they gigged as Benny, Cecil, and the Snakes. Richard Borgens sang on the Truth's 45, Chimes on 42nd Street, When Was Then. The Briks reunited once in 1996 at White Rock Lake. Lee Hardesty. It was really a pretty short run for the original Briks, just a year and a half or so, then another year or so with Paul and Chris and Jamie, I would guess. A lot happened in a fairly short time, and it was quite a while ago. If we'd only had a clue, we should have been writing and recording a lot more. Richard had more talent in that area than we realized at the time, and so did Mike for that matter. Somehow I just don't think I had any idea what we were doing or what the potential was. It was mostly just fun and a way to make some money, and it was a lot of fun sometimes.